any agency in the story whatsoever? Hello everyone, welcome back to An Artist Travels. My name is Nikki and today I have such an exciting video. Today is the day. Okay, so today I'm going to be writing in the style of Chinua Achebe. I have his most famous book here, Things Fall Apart. If you haven't read it, by the way, highly recommend. It's fantastic. It's actually one of my dad's favourite books. He loves it so much. He actually quotes it all the time. It's a really, really excellent book. Please pick it up. So this is episode 1 in a series of which I will be emulating the styles of different writers whom I admire and whose writing styles I think would be fun to explore. Yeah, and some of them are going to be a challenge, I think, because they're very different from my own. Chinua Achebe's is quite different from my own, actually. What I'm going to be doing in this video, rewriting Little Red Riding Hood in the style of Chinua Achebe. Just the opening, so I'm going to read the opening to Things Fall Apart. We're going to talk about his style and what I can then put into Little Red Riding Hood. So first of all, let's get up Little Red Riding Hood. Alright, so I've copied and pasted Red Riding Hood just off Google. There were versions that were for tiny kids. You want something just a little bit more juicy, a bit more meaty than that. So this is what it says.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl who lived in a village near the forest. Whenever she went out, the little girl wore a red riding cloak, so everyone in the village called her Little Red Riding Hood. One morning, Little Red Riding Hood asked her mother if she could go and visit her grandmother, as it had been a while since they'd seen each other. That's a good idea, her mother said. So they packed a nice basket for Little Red Riding Hood to take to her grandmother. When the basket was ready, the little girl put on her red cloak and kissed her mother goodbye.
Okay, so that's what we're working with. As we're going to be writing this in the style of Chinua Achebe, let's have a look at his style. Oh, I need to apologize right now. The pronunciations are going to be incorrect. I'm so sorry. I have actually tried researching how to pronounce all the names, and there's very little that I can find online. Usually I would go and ask my Nigerian housemate. You know, like when it's for an audition or something, she's very helpful if I'm ever auditioning and there are Nigerian terms in the text. But this is, we'll let her do her work. I'm going to try my best. Please don't hate me. Okay. Okonkwo was well known throughout the 9 villages and even beyond. His fame rested on solid personal achievements. As a young man of 18, he had brought honour to his village by throwing Amelins the cat. Amelins was the great wrestler who for 7 years was unbeaten, from Umofwa to Mbano. He was called the Cat because his back would never touch the earth. It was this man that Okonkwo threw in a fight, which the old man agreed was one of the fiercest since the founder of their town engaged a spirit in the wild for 7 days and 7 nights. The drums beat and the flutes sang and the spectators held their breath. Amelins was a wily craftsman, but Okonkwo was as slippery as a fish in water. Every nerve and every muscle stood out on their arms, on their backs and their thighs, and one almost heard the stretching to breaking point. In the end, Okonkwo threw the cat. Oh, soz guys. That was many years ago, 20 years or more, and during this time Okonkwo's fame had grown like a bushfire in the Harmattan. He was tall and huge, and his bushy eyebrows and wide nose gave him a very severe look. He breathed heavily, and it was said that, when he slept, his wives and children in their houses could hear him breathe. When he walked, his heels hardly touched the ground, and he seemed to walk on springs, as if he was going to pounce on somebody. And he did pounce on people quite often. He had a slight stammer, and whenever he was angry and could not get his words out quickly enough, he would use his fists. He had no patience with unsuccessful men. He had had no patience with his father. And then it goes on to talk about Unoka, his father. You get the vibe here from chapter 1 that this is going to be a character-based story. You know how some stories seem to be more plot-based and some seem to be more character-based? We can tell already that Okonkwo is going to be our protagonist. Achebe spends quite a bit of time setting up his personality, and actually towards the end of that extract he introduces the father as well. Something I really like here is the atmosphere that's created and the fact that Achebe uses similes that are very culture specific. So we have here, for example, Okonkwo's fame had grown like a bushfire in the Harmattan, and also little things here like Okonkwo was as slippery as a fish in the water, like just little things like that where you begin to get an idea of perhaps like where he lives. He lives in a village, perhaps they're near to a river where they fish a lot, you know, that kind of thing. So nice little cultural specific nods and references, which I think are is really nice, obviously, and then everything from like, you know, the names and all these sort of things. There's an interesting use of sentence structure. Quite often we have these sort of like longer, slightly more complicated sentences, and then at the end of the paragraph we have a short, punchy statement to really cement in the point of everything that's been said before. So for here we have the description of the fight, and then the final line here is, in the end, Okonkwo threw the cap. So we have tension, 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 what's going to happen? Okonkwo threw a cap. And it's similar to the end here where he says, he had had no patience with his father, which is a nice little link. And then the next chapter, of course, is about Unoka, his father's name. There's also a fair few conjunctions and a lot of run-on sentences as well as repetition. So we have the drums beat and the flute sang and the spectators held their breath. Or we have every nerve and every muscle stood out in their arms, on their backs and their thighs. So quite a bit of listing here, so that's something to bear in mind when I'm rewriting this. And then finally, tone. There's quite a specific tone here, I think. The narrator's voice is very clear. We get a sense that there is a separate narrator who is telling us the story of Okonkwo. I think it's storytelling at its finest, really, and especially when you think about things such as like Afro-Caribbean storytelling, the tone and the voice of the narrator is so strong, and it allows the writer to describe things with such vivid detail, which is what we have here. Oh, sorry, a bit of noise. There's also some moments of humour in here. The most notable one, I think, was he seemed to walk on springs as if he was going to pounce on somebody, full stop, and he did pounce on people quite often. So again, you can sort of hear the narrator's voice in that. So all in all, I think what we're looking at here is a vivid description using culture-specific similes. I'm not sure how I'm going to translate that to Little Red Riding Hood yet. We also have a lot of repetition, some listing, and then a very clear narrator's voice. Riding Hood is going to stay our protagonist. So both live in villages. Beyond his fame rests on solid personal achievements. I was a girl of little. Oh gosh, why is that so tough? What's the word I'm looking for? Like, not tsunami. I can see it in my brain, but I'm like, what is it? No, hurricane. Typhoon's quite tornado. That's the word I wanted. Okay, cool. I like hurricane though. Hurricane, tornado, typhoon. What one should I use? Okay, now we need to apply some sort of action. So when we look at this book here, most of the opening is about the fight. So it's not just a description of who Okonkwo is, it's what he does to show us what he actually does. So now I think we need to apply some sort of action that can further teach us a little bit more about who Red Riding Hood is, which is interesting because who is Red Riding Hood? Do you know what I mean? Like, I didn't create her. Chinua Achebe clearly had a good idea of who Okonkwo was, and so it was easy to be like, this is what his story's about, and this is him doing a fight, which is going to be very relevant to his character. I'm like, who's Little Red Riding Hood? When you really think about it, like, who is she? Like, what is her character? It's kind of bland. She just like takes cookies to grandma and then gets eaten. Does she have any agency in this story whatsoever? She goes to give the cookies because her mum said. It's funny because it's like, who is she? Okay, well, let's work with the original, which is that her mum gives her a nice basket. That's not as exciting as a fight, but there you go. She had yet to see anyone die. Oh! Let's change that. She had yet. Done. I think I'm done. The most we're going to get done in however long this took, like half an hour or so. I will say that this was really fun. I was only planning on writing a few lines, but there came a point, a few paragraphs in, where I was like, this is actually fun, let's keep going. You know when it's like flowing and you're like, yeah. So let me read it out loud. I will say, consciously that I can think of, I think I only included one instance of like this whole listing. So I was like, and. But I think there's like a good job of introducing other characters here, but still showing us that Little Red Riding Hood is the protagonist. There's some elements in here. I tried to use as many similes as I could. And I did end the story in a similar style. The last lines were, he had no patience with unsuccessful men. He had no patience with unsuccessful men. He had no patience with his father. So listen out for my final line. Tell me what you think. Okay. Up until the age of 15, Little Red Riding Hood grew up in a nondescript village near the Harpid Forest, an area known for its wild animals from wolves to coyotes. She lived with Mama Bear Palm and their cat Joanna. Mama Bear Palm was renowned throughout the village for her temper. It was said that if one angered her, she would move so quickly it would cause her shawl to ripple about her broad shoulders, as though she carried a personal hurricane in the fabric of her clothing. Nobody wanted to be on the receiving end of Mama's smacks. She would raise her large palm and bring it whistling through the air, faster than a leopard in the undergrowth. One morning, Mama told Little Red Riding Hood, "Tomorrow you should go visit your grandmother. I will pack homemade bread and the small silverfish she likes so much." When the sun rose over their house, I should add the following day, Little Red Riding Hood awoke quickly and went to the kitchen, where the smell of freshly baked bread and salted fish met her. She packed them all in her basket and headed outside. The birds sang and the sun beat upon her back, and Little Red Riding Hood skipped through the old beaten path to where her grandmother lived. Her grandmother was small and wiry, with wolfish eyes that gave her a most mischievous look. Little Red Riding Hood's happiest memories were with her grandmother, who had once told her folk tales about fairies who lived in the woods and led children astray. It was said that her grandmother could weave a story out of anything, and she often did. But that was many years ago, and her grandmother was very ill now. She spent most of her time in bed, a threadbare blanket pulled all the way up to her chin. It scared Little Red Riding Hood. She had never seen anybody severely ill before. She had yet to see somebody die. And that's it. That's the end. That was really fun. That was super, super fun. It was quite funny because actually, when I was talking about the whole Mama told Little Red Riding Hood bit, I realised that there's actually no dialogue yet in this opening. So I was like, oh, should I include dialogue? Should I not? I actually ended up putting the dialogue in italics, so it felt more of like the narrator saying. I tried to do the whole, the birds sang and the sun beat upon her back and Little Red Riding Hood skipped along the old beaten path. The moment I quite like in this is actually, it was said that her grandmother could weave a story out of anything. And she often did, because that was me mirroring, and he did pounce on people quite often. So I feel like the tone was there. I think the tone was there. I mean, it's definitely a different tone to what I write. Whether I encapsulated some of the tone of this, you know, you can be the judge. Let me know, comment below how you think I did. You can rate me out of 10. Is there something that I missed? But yeah, thank you so much for watching this video. This was super fun to make. I hope it was entertaining for you. Give me a comment below. Let me know which author I should try and emulate next. And also, have a go at doing this yourself. Like, write down a paragraph and then comment that down below. I would love to read your interpretation of how you might adapt Little Red Riding Hood in the voice of Chinua Achebe. Yeah, this was super fun. Give the video a like. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye. I might keep the original here. One morning, Little Red Riding Hood asked her mother if she could go visit her grandmother. I mean, I don't hate it. I don't hate it. It goes straight to the action.